Hi, guys. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're joined by an incredible woman, proving that age is just a number. Avril McClement is the open women's 65 to 69 world record holder. After competing in London Olympia in her first solo Hyrox race, she came away with an incredibly impressive time of 1:25 and a ticket to the world champs. So we'll see you in Chicago. We can't wait to hear more about your journey into Hyrox. So let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast, Avril.
Thanks for inviting me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Oh, we're really excited and we can't wait to find out more about your Hyrox journey and how it's all been going, where it started. Maybe first we can talk about that race in Olympia that is the one that's booked you your ticket to the world champs, and you got the world record for your age group. So how was it?
Oh my God. Do you know what? Since the whole thing, my stomach hasn't stopped turning over, because everything's happened so fast, really. When I did the singles at Olympia, I hadn't even done a full sim as a singles. I've done doubles before, but it was going into the race and thinking, oh my God, I hope I can actually do this, the whole thing on my own, because even just a half sim killed me, to be frank with you. And I've not been able to do a full sim because I've been having issues with my right shoulder, which is, we'll come on to that later if you like. So I was trying to protect that. But yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I didn't do the solo, if you like, to achieve any particular record. It was more of just, can I do this on my own? But I was very fortunate because I had so many people there to support me, and I think that was incredible for me, because those guys were also driving me. And I am a bit of a dipstick when it comes to the fact that I hadn't realised I'd done an extra lap. Thank goodness they didn't tell me. But then they were then shouting me in, this is your first lap, this is your second lap, because I was in my own zone, and that's the trouble, really focusing with when you're doing a Hyrox event. When I've done doubles before, I've relied on my partners where I'd say, we're on our second lap, or, we're on such and such, and let's go, we're going through here, we're going through there. And I realised in this whole thing this time, I'm on my own with this. But it was almost kind of like surreal. I didn't know that I was in line for achieving a world record. It wasn't until my kids started shouting me. I think we got to the bit where I was doing the farmers walks, and yeah, somebody shouted, she's in line for a record. So when I went out of that, I forgot about it, though. They'd said it, but my focus was still on completing this. I just wanted to get it done, and the whole thing was just absolutely amazing. I mean, I had my grandchildren there that were shouting nanny. I had my son shouting, my daughter, and we had people even there that actually come on the train from where I actually train, just to see me do the singles, really to give me that encouragement, because you'd have laughed really weeks before that, because I'd be in the gym and I'd be on the bike trying to protect my shoulder, because I'd had a steroid injection. I'd seen my consultant. So I couldn't do any running, and I couldn't do any weightlifting. I couldn't do any kind of resistance training. So it was a matter of getting on the bike. But if you'd have seen me, there I am in this shoulder brace. I'd also got a thumb brace on at the time. And you wouldn't have thought that I'm in a few weeks' time going to be running a Hyrox singles, and it was quite laughable, really. And I still had that element of doubt, even at that point, thinking, oh my God, I hope I can actually get through this. I've got a lot of people relying on me to complete this. So I felt a little bit pressurized, which I'd not felt before with doing the doubles, because I was going in with no real expectations. It was a matter of just running with the first Hyrox I did with my son. That was crazy. And then the second one I did with a lady, somebody that's about 20 years younger than me, in fact, 30 years younger than me, lovely girl called Becky. And that felt fine. The second one felt great. And I suppose it was an opportunity to say, look, I've got something else to prove here. I can prove I can do a doubles with a mixed. I can do a doubles with a women's. And now this is a goal that I want to achieve. I want to achieve this. And God, you know, I couldn't believe it when I did. You know, when I got over that finish line, I felt absolutely knackered. I've got to be honest with you. But also exhilarated that I'd actually managed to achieve it. You know, it was, oh God, I've actually done it, you know. And it was just, it was almost like, I know this might sound really corny, but it was like something out of a film, because I'd got, when I was on the wall balls, and, you know, wall balls is my worst station. I've got to be honest with you guys. And I'd got, I think it was the head judge then shouting in my ear, you're a minute and a half off a world record here. And then I could hear my son shouting in the background, how much do you want this? You know, when you're actually dying, you know. And I could hear my granddaughter had got this bell that my daughter had the week before, because my daughter had run the London Marathon the week before. And I could hear this bell. And when I was actually doing the Hyrox itself at different points, I could hear this bell ringing, and I knew that was my granddaughter, you know. So when I actually finished, I could hear the elation that was there, and so it wasn't just a massive achievement for me. I felt, you know, I'd achieved this for everybody at my gym and for everybody else that had come to support me. So it was the most incredible experience. I think that's the thing that I would say, an incredible achievement, really. Yeah,
and to have all the support around you, like you say, like knowing that everyone's rooting for you, like it can really like be quite emotional, I guess, like towards the end, when you're thinking, God, I am actually going to achieve this. And I wanted to ask, like, you mentioned a little bit there, like you'd done the doubles and then you had this desire to go on and do the solo race. Was that just to like prove to yourself that you could, or have you participated in solo events before and you wanted to challenge yourself like that, or did you just think, why not, you know, I enjoyed the doubles, why not give the solo a go?
I think it was just to prove it to myself, because when you work together as a team in your doubles, you get that opportunity to have a little bit of a rest, although you do still go hard. And I thought to myself, have I got really enough in the tank to be able to give 100% on my own? So it was, if you like, another goal, really, another achievement. Anything that I've done on my own previously is I haven't done anything competitively as such. I've run the marathon. I ran the Coventry Marathon when they first introduced that years ago. I was probably about 21 at the time. And then I ran the marathon in 2014 with my daughter. And I only ran that actually a bit, I won't say by mistake. My daughter had asked, would I kind of like help coach her for the London Marathon in 2014. And I said, well, I might as well just train with you and do it with you. So we managed to get, I've probably digressed now, haven't I? We managed to get a couple of places running for charity for Click Sergeant. And we did that together. But doing something on your own compared to when you're doing it with somebody else, I think the difference is you are, how can I put it? You know, what you put into it is what you put into it. You know, you don't rely on somebody else. I mean, don't get me wrong, when I did the very first one with my son, I hadn't felt very well before the event and I wasn't 100%. And my son had even said to me on the day, because I did the doubles with my son, he said, look, we don't have to do this. And I've never backed out of anything. I've always, if I've committed, I'm going to do it. And I said, no, we're going to do this. But oh my God, I was absolutely dreadful on the sled pull. I ended up on my arse. You know, can you imagine this with hundreds of people watching this woman sat on her backside trying to pull this sled? It wasn't budging. And someone said, get out of the way. And bless him, he had to do the whole of that on his own. But we did complement each other, because I was better at the burpees and I was better at the lunges and the farmer's walks. My wall balls were appalling, absolutely appalling. And I remember feeling afterwards that I'd let him down. I really was quite upset. I was exhilarated that we'd done it together, but I felt that I'd let him down because I wasn't able to give my best. And which was converse, really. When I ran the doubles with Becky, she didn't have the best race that day, and I felt I'd got a lot more still in the tank. You know, I think we could have done a better time. It wasn't bad. I think we did it in, was it 1:15? But I knew that I could run. I was running fast. I was having to slow my pace and things for her to keep up. But I don't think she felt 100%. And I'm cognizant of the fact that any kind of event that you go into, if you're not feeling 100%, it is very hard to give your best, and you have to really pull on that resilience to get you through and think, well, whatever happens is going to happen. I was fortunate at Olympia. I felt good on the day. I was nervous as hell, to be honest with you, because, as I say, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to accomplish the whole of this thing on my own. But I also felt, what I put into this is it's all down to me. This is all down to me. Whatever happens is all down to me. Yeah.
Avril, just you touched on the fact your daughter asked you to coach her for the marathon. So is your background in running? Are you a running coach, or what's your background? Because it sounds like you might be very very, like, what am I trying to say? As in, like, very knowledgeable in running, and obviously like endurance events. If your daughter comes to you to ask some advice for marathon running, and is that transferred over to Hyrox, or what's your background?
No, to be honest with you, I was a dancer. I from the age of 7, I danced right up until my 20s. That was I did that literally every single day. And I'd always wanted to be a professional dancer. That's all. I lived and breathed it. When they ask you at school, what is it that you want to do? I wanted to be a dancer. My parents insisted I go off and do a secretarial diploma to back me up should things not really turn out. I had confidence in my abilities. I didn't do that for a great deal of time. I met my ex-husband at the time. We're doing would you believe, it was almost like a competition. It was called Startown years ago, absolutely years ago. It was televised, and I met him. He played in a group, so that was kind of like the end of that. I just carried on doing that semi-pro, but I've always been fairly sporty. At school, I was part of the athletics team. I used to do cross country. I used to do 100 meters, 200, 400, and relay. And then running, I suppose, really became my go-to. I'm not a running coach at all. I don't profess to have any particular background in that area. But when I did the Coventry Marathon, I coached myself through various research. I bought a book. I read the book, followed the book. And that really provided me with the opportunity to avoid any injuries and so forth. My sports, I would say, in all fairness, a lot of everything that I have done in the way of sport and resistance training has mostly been a way of coping with stress and unfortunately depression. I've got to be honest with you, I have suffered with depression from quite an early age. I was probably 16 when I was diagnosed with depression, and at that time, I suppose one would say that mental health was something that nobody really discussed in those days. It was always hidden behind closed doors. It wasn't something that you would admit to. And when I think back now, it must have been very hard for my parents to deal with somebody that, would be so low in themselves that, how do we deal with this? And I think I found my savior, particularly with dancing and with running and doing resistance training, because I could, if you like, escape from whatever it was that was bothering me. And those endorphins, that serotonin that release that you would get would, if you like, help pacify those areas of my life that were really at that particular time plaguing me. Don't get me wrong, we can talk about depression now, I think, quite openly. We can talk about mental health because it's now become, if you like, more acceptable. People are a lot more open about it. But for me, I suppose it's fair to say that fitness sport has been my savior to get me through those very low ebbs. When it came to the resistance training, I think some of that was also because I could see actually changes in my body. When you do resistance training, you can see it transform. And I remember I did get to a point where I was probably doing too much of it. I couldn't. You get past a point of seeing those changes, and I became too muscular. I think people used to say, you know. But again, it was just challenging myself to be able to lift a bit more and do a bit more. And at that time, I suppose I was putting a lot of stress on my body because I hadn't got anybody coaching me, and nobody to guide me. And maybe, you know, the impact of doing some of that previously all those years ago without the kind of support that you get in gyms these days, and the coaches that you get, may have caused some of the issues that I've had with some of my joints. I mean, it's taken a battering over the years, you know, with dancing. I used to do ballet, tap, modern, acrobatics, you know, the amount of time I used to be able to walk on my hands for ages. It used to be, if you like, one of the tricks at school, that I could walk over dozens of people. I used to be able to balance on my hands and balance on other people. I wasn't that flexible, to be honest with you. When I used to do the splits, it used to kill me. But balancing was my forte, backflips, and that puts a lot of strain and stresses on your body. But I suppose it's fair to say that going to a gym, or even just going out for a run, was my escapism. It was my way of actually, it's a coping mechanism as well as keeping myself healthy. And I guess over the years, I didn't want to. I mean, I come from a generation where my parents, for example, you would never have seen my parents in a gym. I think I look back now, and I suppose my inspiration came from, I used to love to watch athletics on TV. I used to love to watch the Olympics. And of course, and I used to love to watch dancing, Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire and things like this, you know. And I knew that to be able to dance appropriately, and to be able to perform, I also needed to be fit, you know. If you're doing cabaret work and you're doing 2 45-minute spots, you need to have the endurance to be able to do that, you know, efficiently. I'm not the best singer in the world, guys, by the way. I'm not this fantastic singer, but when you're doing a vocal dance act, you need to be able to have the breath to be able to sing and dance at the same time and do all these very quick costume changes as well. I'm probably digressing terribly here, aren't I? I'm like this.
No.
I'm going different tangents. I mean, I know it came back to you asking me whether I actually have a background in coaching. No, in effect, I don't. A lot of everything that I have done, I've either researched, I've listened to others, I've read, and that's also inspired me, you know, to be able to do what I do. It's a very different ball game now, because when I train with people that have that kind of expertise, that guidance and that support. I'm very fortunate that my son-in-law and my daughter, they own a gym. It's not the kind of gym that you would walk in. Anybody would just walk in and be a member that would just use the weights or, you know, use the gym itself. I'd say we're very much a community sort of gym. We do boot camps, personal training sessions, group sessions, and Hyrox sessions. And people come from all backgrounds, different ages, different sizes, different fitness levels. But boy, it's an environment that I feel people can want to come to and want to train in, because going back to when I used to, if you like, train, the resistance training came into its fore because when Gladiators, for example, when that first came round, I auditioned for it, and it was a last minute audition. I'd got 3 weeks notification about this audition. And at that time, I was working in the clinical profession. And one of the nurses that I was working with, she said her son owned this gym. And I'm sure I could go there and do some weights and what have you. And I remember walking in this gym that was like, you know, like it was almost like a spit and sawdust sort of thing. And I've got these guys with these massive bodies, and there wasn't one other female in this gym. And in I walked, this petite woman, and you could actually, it was almost like you could hear everybody just stop and look and think, what the hell is she doing here? And I trained in that gym. I thought, no, I've got the right to train in this gym as well. You know, I've got the right to use these weights. And then I did train there for those particular 3 weeks. I would run there, train there, and run back home. But I then, after that, I didn't get through, by the way, for gladiators. I lost it on the chin-ups. I did. Apparently the fastest woman on the day of the runner inside of it and all the other aspects, but I lost it on the chin-ups. Those chin-ups. But I remember coming back home and my son bursting into tears because mum didn't get through to gladiators. I know, and I felt really I'd let them down. But in fact, you know, in a way, it almost comes back to me getting that world record at Olympia. It almost kind of like made up, because my son and daughter were there. It kind of like made up for how I disappointed them with this gladiator thing. You know, really, I've achieved something else, you know, and obviously they were very, very proud. But that's how I suppose the resistance training became part of my life. And I continue to do that because I also realized that resistance training wasn't just about changing your body for appearance sake. It was also about building that muscle that supported those bones, that certainly as we get older, I'm cognizant of the fact that bone density, you know, starts to be affected as we do get older. So I wanted to carry on lifting weights to make my bones stronger, to make my muscles a lot stronger as well, to be able to support me doing what I'm doing. Because I also ended up, when I had my daughter, 3 months after having my daughter, I actually woke up with 2 prolapse discs. I don't know how it happened, but I had 2 prolapse discs. The pain was unbelievable. And in those days, they used to do traction. I used to go as an outpatient and have traction. And it still didn't really cure it as such. I went to see a chiropractor. My parents paid for me to see a chiropractor in Kenilworth. I thought he broke my back when he did whatever he did to me, but certainly I was aware that I'd got a back weakness there. And over the years, my facet joints and my sacroiliac ligaments have taken a bit of a battering. And I was very fortunate that I've had a very supportive consultant that advised me, no, don't give up on the exercise. If anything, continue with doing what you're doing, because that will actually strengthen your back. So it wasn't a matter of, oh, I've had 2 prolapse discs here and I've had some issues with my back. I can't possibly train. I can't possibly run. Again, it was about listening to my body, you know, learning to lift correctly, learning, you know, about my posture. And certainly when it came to doing any resistance training, lifting weights in a correct way, and not overdoing things. You know, I'm not Superwoman. I'm not going to be able to lift some of the weights that some of the other people can lift. It was a matter of training within my own capabilities, you know, and being able to push myself a little bit step by step. And I think over the years, that's always, it's been hard because I'm hard on myself because I do want to be good at what I do. I still feel, I might be 65, but inwards, I'm still this 20-year-old that's hungry for trying something new, doing something new. And I sometimes have to rein myself back in, you know. It's because I love those challenges. I get nervous about them. I think to myself, why the hell am I doing this? You're mad. But it's just that sense of achievement. You know, when I talk about when I trained, I did actually train with my son. I mean, that was the thing. He boxes, my son boxes, so he's fit. I'm very fortunate that my kids take after myself. They're both very fit. And I'd like to think that I've inspired them to be fit. And I think when it came to Natalie asking me to coach her, I think it's because she thinks, well, Mum's doing a marathon, she runs, she'll be able to help me be able to get through this marathon, you know. It wasn't because I was an expert in any way, and I don't profess to be at all, really. And it's funny, isn't it, really? Because over the years, I've seen these transitions of the way that people train and the things that we do, the way that we, you know, our nutrition, the way that that's changed, your attitude towards what you eat. and your recovery from doing your training. I didn't have until a year ago, I didn't have a watch that would look at my training, my heart rate or anything else like that. And I used to say to my daughter, right, I know when I've run 35 minutes because my hip will tell me. And it's seriously, I could say 35 minutes in, my hip will start to tell me I've been running for 35 minutes. I said, I don't need a watch to tell me that my heart's going 10 to a dozen, because I know when my heart's going 10 to a dozen, and I know when, I'm really pushing myself here. But it's been interesting actually to now wear it's only an Apple, it's not a Garmin, it's an Apple Watch that I look at, and it's quite nice to be able to see where I am peaking, or where I've really pushed myself to the limit, because this is the thing, isn't it? This is what's so fascinating with things that do move on. The equipment that we use, our attitude towards what we do, the way that we exercise has changed. But I do wish that I'm only one of a few people that have that kind of mentality once you get into your late 50s and your 60s, because I think, unfortunately, a lot of people that I've met in that kind of age category, there's always a reason why they can't train. It will be, oh, I've had an issue with my back, or I've had a bit of an issue with my knee, or I can't possibly, because, I'm asthmatic, or there's always a reason behind it. And I'd say, but they're the reasons to do it. They're the actual reasons to train, because it will make you feel so much better in yourself. It will improve the quality of your life. And I mean, I was mortified. It was 4.5 years ago when I went to see a consultant about my shoulder at the time, because if you'd seen me trying to undress myself and trying to get out of a sports top was like trying to get out of a sealed bag. It was quite comical, really, because I didn't have the flexibility in my shoulders anymore. The pain was dramatic. And I thought, oh, what the hell's going on here, And when I saw this consultant, and I'd had an MRI scan and an X-ray, and when he said to me that I needed a shoulder replacement, I mean, at that time, as I say, I was only just 60, 61. I said, you're kidding me, a shoulder replacement. And he said, yeah. He said, your shoulder's completely, it's knackered. You can see here. I said, well, I'm too young for a shoulder replacement. Can we not do something else about it? And I did have some steroid injections, and I had a graft there. But in the meantime, that was my right shoulder, by the way. In the meantime, the left shoulder started to deteriorate. And it's arthritis. I do have, unfortunately, it's something that's within my family. We all inherit something. I'd rather have that than some other issues. But yeah, I have arthritis. And my left shoulder just started to go, really. And that made it really very uncomfortable when I was training, because it was painful. But I didn't want to give up on it. It was okay. As long as I'm not doing any more damage, I can get through this, because I don't want those joints to completely seize up. I was aware that I wasn't going to be able to lift those heavier weights that I had been lifting previously. But it was a matter of me then using the lighter weights and doing more repetitions to get around that. So that's what I did. I carried on, up until the point that when I was then going back to see my consultant, he said, your left shoulder's, it's kaput. And now, Avril, we've got to the point that if we don't do a shoulder replacement now, well, as soon as you're on the waiting list for it, if we don't, you'll end up with a reverse shoulder replacement, which won't give you the same result. Apparently it displaces the humerus. You don't get such a good result. So I felt I was in. Had made my mind up then at that point that I've got to have the shoulder replacement. And I did. It was a year and 2 months later I had a shoulder replacement. But oh boy, that was probably one of the most painful things that I've ever had done. Having to sleep in a brace for 2 weeks and have this brace on for 2 weeks. And then I also panicked because I thought, well, what about more training, And remembering that, I know it's coming almost full circle, that I also train because it helps my mental health. And I thought, I'm going to be not in a good place here. I'm just not going to be in a good place. And I could even feel that, you know, during my recovery. And I'm also on my own. I live on my own. And for me, training with other people as well, it is an opportunity to be with others, to talk to others, to talk about other things. You may be training, but you do talk about other things. You share emotions, you share your stress, if you like. And I thought, oh, I can't possibly do this. So I'd have to get my daughter to pick me up, drive me to the gym, and I'd go on the bike with this brace. And that was 2 weeks just after having the shoulder replacement. So I'd just go on the bike. I'd watch everybody around me training. I'd be shouting, come on, you can do this, you know, and they're pushing the sled and they're really struggling or whatever. And the comical thing was I'd always call them different names because I'm great for faces and rubbish with names. But I was very fortunate, again, that I had that community around me that were inspiring me. And then I had a very good physio. I'd already said to this physio the first day that I met this physio was, look, I've got a ticket for Hyrox in October. And I'd had my shoulder replacement. It's March the 4th last year. And I said, and I want to do it. Is there a possibility I can do it? And she said, well, what is this Hyrox? And I got my phone out, showed her my phone. Oh, I don't know about that. But I was in a fortunate but in an unfortunate position where I'd been made redundant from my job. So I wasn't actually working at that time. So I was able to do all my exercises that I'd been given. I was able to do them avidly. My daughter's also a physiotherapist as well. So I was following everything that she was saying. I was able to bring some light weights home from the gym. And progressively, you know, I was able to be at that position to start introducing weights. And I was itching to go for a run. I was just itching to go for a run. And so 6 weeks later, I said, can I go for a run? I'm going for a run. I'm going for a run. And it was that again, my exercise helped me get through what had been quite a crazy transition with my shoulder. My exercise helped me through all of that. And yes, and I did get to Hyrox with a full shoulder replacement in the October. But it's my right shoulder now. I've already been told that needs replacing. You know, I've got bone on bone with that one. And when I saw I've got a brilliant consultant. I must shout him out, Mr. Tim Cresswell, very empathetic consultant. Explained to him that, you know, I was doing Olympia. I'm in a lot of pain with it. I'm struggling even with some of the training now. So my training had to change. I had to modify it a lot. I had to focus a lot more on my running, getting on the bike. Again, just trying to not push my shoulder too much to the point that I was going to really cause some injury that I wouldn't be able to compete. And so I had a steroid injection in that. He said to me, look, the only thing you can do on the day, Avril, is dose yourself up with some anti-inflammatories, some painkillers. You could take something stronger. I said no, because I'd probably end up running around the wrong way, or I'd end up on the wrong station. I need to be completely aware of what I'm doing. But you know, when the adrenaline's going, guys, you don't feel it. It's afterwards that you feel it. You don't feel it then. But it's strange, isn't it, really, that exercise for me, and I think this is an important thing to share, although it'd been part of my life, you know, as a youngster, because of school, because the emphasis very much was still on PE when you did it in my day. But my exercise that I do, whether it's just been stretches, whether it's been doing dancing, whether it's been running or resistance training, a lot of that has been helping me deal with, if you like, the stresses and strains of modern living, and facing the fact that I still suffer with depressive bouts from time to time. And it has been as I said before, my savior, my coping mechanism, because, you know, you can get into some real low depths, you know, when we talk about depression. I think unless somebody's actually felt depressed at some point in their life, or have gone through those kind of episodes where they've probably felt the lowest they've ever felt in their life, it's very, very hard to explain that I I went through, well, basically, guys, you know, I had a breakdown. That's how my training for doing the Coventry Marathon came about, because it got to a point where antidepressants that they used to prescribe years ago are very different to antidepressants now. Very, very different. Don't get me wrong, there is a place for them, but I felt that they changed me. They changed me. And I remember my mum saying to me, I ended up in hospital, and my mum came to see me the next day. And you know, I laugh at this. This might sound really quite incredible, but it was something that was very, very profound. I was in hospital, and it was during the night, and I was there with nothing to read, nothing to do. And there was a Bible, because you always had a Bible at your bedside in a hospital. And I picked up this Bible and just started reading it. And I don't remember any particular page or any particular chapter or whatever. But I felt this almighty, it was almost like a slap. It was like a thud and this bright light. And it was almost as if, I know it sounds crazy to you, but it was almost as if it was just a draining. It was just a complete draining. And when my mum came to see me the next day in hospital, she said, "You look different. You look different." And I said to my mum, I said, "I'm not taking any more antidepressants. I'm not seeing anybody else. I'm not seeing any psychiatrists. I don't want this anymore." And literally flushed all my antidepressants down the drain, which wasn't the way to do it. You should bring yourself off gradually off antidepressants. And I put it on my trainers and I ran. It was almost like Forrest Gump. I just would run and I would run and I would run. And it was the running that came back into my life that helped me deal with that. And that's why that has continued. That if I was upset about something, I'd had an argument about something, it was get the trainers on, go for a run. When I was studying for my exams at university, because I was a mature student, I was doing law, going through the kind of like the back door at the University of Warwick. I'd put on my trainers and I would be reciting all these legal cases to support my answers as I'm running. Mind you, that was the funniest episode as well. You know, I'm running along, reciting all of this case law. And I used to look at all these different houses and these different gardens as I was running. I didn't have any headphones. And I ran straight into a lamppost. I ran into this lamppost. And I couldn't imagine, I was absolutely mortified. I'm on the floor. There's this guy that pulls up by the side of me. And he gets out of the car, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." I mean, I wasn't, because it actually hurt and I wanted to cry, but I thought, no, I can't cry. But yeah, I look back now and I laugh about those things. But again, that running and that exercise helped me different things in my life, you know. And I also went through a divorce, and that completely knocked me for six. It really did. And I'd lost my home, the business we had, my job. I lost very much my confidence. I really did. I think that was probably one of the things that I grieved. I'd like literally my life had completely changed, and I was depressed. I ended up back on antidepressants, and I was drinking. I was probably, it's fair to say, probably even some nights, even a whole bottle of wine. And I thought, I can't carry on like this. You know, this is not right. This, you're better than this, Avril. You can overcome this. You've overcome things in the past. You can do this. And I remember this one day putting on my trainers, and I remember running along and crying as I was running. It was almost, and I would shout out. I would, I'd cuss under my breath, and it was dealing with all of that, if you like, what I'd lost. But again, in a way, it empowered me. It empowered me to thought, no, I'm not letting this defeat me. I'm better than this. I am better than this. I don't need that individual in my life. I am better than this. And that's where, again, I went back to all of my training, my resistance training and my running again. And I still say to this day, you know, I think back sometimes, and I think without that, I might not even be here today, you know, because I've been very fortunate that I've had my family, my friends around to give me a great deal of that support. But finding exercise, in whatever form it is, has helped me to overcome those stresses, those traumatic episodes in my life, you know. And I'm a great believer of that. You know, we can all turn to various different things, but I do it for the reason for stress and for depression, but it's also because I want to live longer. You know, I've lived a lot more of my life than supposedly I've got ahead of me. And I've still got this kind of like 20-year-old mentality. And I want to keep these bone strongs. I want to keep those comorbidities at bay where I possibly can. Yes, I have a shoulder replacement and I'm due another one. I'm also hypothyroid, which that was alarming to find out about that. And I only found out that I had a thyroid issue purely by chance. I'd had some lymph nodes removed. Thank God at the time we thought it might be something more sinister than that. But the consultant that I knew at that time said, we think you've had glandular fever in the past. That would have explained why I was feeling really tired at that time. But then hypothyroidism was diagnosed. So that explains, as I say, that very much feeling very tired, dry hair, dry skin. So that again is all controlled. My asthma was more, I never had it as a child, but it was adult asthma. And I didn't want to even admit that I'd even got asthma, you know, and realize that I needed to rely on an inhaler. And I've been able to manage that over the years. But I did have December of last year, I had some sort of virus that really knocked me for six. And that affected my respiration. I found that running, I was struggling with my breathing. And even when I was at rest, I was struggling. And eventually I went to see my GP because I was a little bit concerned about it. And it got to the point where I think that part of that might have also been stress, because my GP had thought it was what we call dysfunctional breathing, where I was thinking about my breathing. Then I'd got myself to a stage where I was thinking about how I was breathing. And so you start to breathe very differently. And even when I was running, I was starting to think like that and thinking, oh, I can't get my breath. And I was in a Hyrox training session, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have an asthma attack. And I couldn't breathe at all. It was quite frightening. Anyway, cutting a long story short, they put me on a higher steroid inhaler, and that helped to resolve things for a while. So again, sometimes we have to accept there has to be some medical intervention to enable you to do some of the things that you need to do. But those medical interventions shouldn't stop you from doing some of the things that you need to do. You know, it's accepting, yes, I have an issue with arthritis. Yes, I have an issue with my respiration, with asthma and my thyroid. But it doesn't mean to say I can't do exercise and lead, you know, a fit and healthy life otherwise, really.
Yeah. I think that's a really important message, because I think some people can think like, oh, you know, I've got a bit of a sore back, or like you say, a bit of a sore knee, or I've got asthma, and then that stops them doing anything altogether, especially as they get older, because they think like, oh, it's going to make things worse, or I'm going to push my body too far, whereas actually it is almost the reverse of that. And by staying fit and strong and getting out, being in the gym, and for your mental health, being surrounded by the community and helping you have something for you and de-stress, like it's all really, really important. Like, and it doesn't need to stop just because you're getting older and maybe things do hurt a little bit more. You might just need to, like you say, take better care and have the intervention when you need it, and yeah, maybe have the extra hot bath or rest day, or like do the little things to help you be able to keep going and like stay as fit and active as you can. I mean, I think you're an inspiration, and for everything you've been through, and to still have like the the positivity coming across, and you might not always feel it all the time, but the fact that you keep picking yourself back up, getting out there, like putting yourself in these positions, doing the races, like it's incredible. I think so many people will be listening and have like seen on social media from, I know there was a few bits after Olympia, and seeing what you've achieved, and I really hope it does inspire some of the older women especially to give it a go and think like, I can do it. I can do a doubles or a relay, or even just maybe do some running and get out the door and like do a little bit of fitness. Yeah, so I think
I do. Absolutely. People don't have to run marathons. They don't have to run 5Ks or 10Ks, you know, even if it's just walking around the block. And you know, and people that, you know, I've worked with, I said, you know, even if you're at home, you don't need to go and buy any particular weights. You can get a can of beans out the cupboard and just use things like that. You know, you can improvise. And I think for some people it's that going into a gym, I think it's the environment that I think scares a lot of people. And I always say it's easier to have a training buddy, because when you get at a point where you think, oh God, no, I don't want to go, or when you've got somebody else to say, yeah, we are going, because that then drives you. It drives you, and I think that's what helps, even in any sessions that you go to. It's like, for example, when I train, invariably most of the time I'll train with other people. I have my sessions on my own with my coach at times, or with my son-in-law or my daughter. But when I'm with other people, it's almost like it works conversely. I like to think I inspire some of the younger folk, but also those younger folks, I think to myself, you might be a bit younger than me, but I still want to be able to keep up with you, you know? And so that they push me as well. So it works both ways. And I think that's the thing, that a lot of the feedback, I'm just so fortunate, Faye and Emma, that, you know, I've got a wonderful community of people that I train with. I mean, for example, they have fundraised for me to get to Chicago, because there was no way I could afford to get to Chicago in such a short space of time. That just wasn't going to happen. I hadn't got the finances to do that. And they've done this, what they call Avalon. They've done a fundraising to raise these funds, because they said that we're so proud of you and what you've achieved, and you've helped us, that we want to help you. And to have that, you know, it's quite humbling, really. And I think if I can inspire youngsters, or, you know, even like people like my grandchildren, if they can see Nanny exercising and keeping fit, you know, that's great for them. You know, I think if youngsters can see older people still trying to keep themselves fit and healthy, I think that's a great inspiration, because I think it is important to instill that from an early age, not wait till it's too late. It's about, we've got one body. It's got to do a lot of mileage in a lot of our lifetime. And it's about looking after it. It's about listening to it, but it's also about looking after it. You know, it's like a car. You know, you still have to give it that petrol, that diesel to give it that fuel to keep it going. And so we need to think about, again, what we're putting into our bodies, you know, not eating all the crap that's potentially out there, to start thinking about eating more healthily. And yeah, you can have a glass of wine. You know, by the way, I don't drink bottles of wine, full bottles of wine now. I still like my glass of wine. That's my treat. I do like a glass of wine. And that's going to be, you know, when I go out to Chicago, that's, you know, having to not even drink a glass of wine until after the whole event's over. That's going to be hard. But yeah, you can still do those sort of things. You can still have, you know, a good time with exercise. Don't look at it as your enemy. It's your friend. It's your friend. You know, it's going to help you. It's going to help your lifelong longevity and your health, both physically and mentally, you know. And these girls that keep turning to other kind of modalities to supposedly keep this body and all the rest of it, it's not just about the outside. It's also what goes on inside, you know. You know, it really is important, you know. And it's a shame that some of them don't understand that really. And I think it is about educating people. And I'd love to think that if it was only one person that I'd inspired, that's incredible for me. And yeah,
like you say, like, so I think social media's got a lot to do with it now, and like you're saying, like influencing individuals. And I think, yeah, especially with like young girls, you see social media and it is very aesthetic and what you look like. And I think the more, like, maybe this is where Hyrox has been quite good, and like CrossFit, and the more athletic females you can see and people that are training like their bodies to do amazing things rather than just how they look. And the more we can get that word out there, that hopefully it's like training for performance or training like to keep healthy, to see what your body can do rather than training for what your body looks like to look great in whatever. It's a byproduct that you'll look great because you're training your body to do incredible things. But I think also like the way you just said about inspiring and leading by example, you've obviously done that with your own children, with your grandchildren. And I think in Hyrox as well, we're seeing on the female side, the males as well, because obviously a lot of them have got children, but some of the top females in the Elite 15, they're all mothers. They have their children there, and it's an incredibly inspiring community for seeing these young children coming up, watching these strong, powerful women, and right through from the Elite 15, right up through every single age category. And you're just exactly, you're the same in your age category as these Elite 15 ladies, just proving to people what you can do when you commit, work hard, have a really supportive community, and you go for a goal that, I really like that you said you didn't know whether you could do it, but you still stood on that start line. And I think a lot of people, I mean, what would your advice be to people? There's probably a lot of people listening now that will go, oh, I could never do a Hyrox, or oh, I could never run 5K or go down to my park run. And obviously you said you stood on that side, that start line as a solo participant to do your singles, but you didn't know whether you could finish. Do you have any advice to anybody to say, like, just go and do it? Like, how do they go and put themselves on that start line and not know they can finish? What's your advice there?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't advise going straight into a Hyrox never having done any sort of training. You don't have to be getting on that start line thinking that you need to finish in an hour and a half, or whatever. It doesn't matter what time you finish in, because I'd also compare that to, for example, somebody who's running a marathon. The fact that you committed to wanting to do it shows that there is something inside of you that's giving you that impetus to say, come on, I can achieve this. And I think achieving Hyrox is hard. There's no doubt about that. It's probably one of the biggest challenges. And I don't, in fact, sometimes I think I'd rather run a marathon than do Hyrox. But I think that it's the mental resilience, I think, that gets you through, because you tell yourself, I don't know whether I'm going to do this, but I'm going to give it the best shot that I possibly can. And that's all anybody can ask of themselves. As I say, it's not about achieving bronze, silvers, or golds, or just the fastest times or whatever. It's a massive achievement if you can get across and do a Hyrox and finish. It doesn't matter what time you finish it in, because it is such an incredible achievement, irrespective of what age that you are, because it's a challenge in itself. That it's mentally and physically, it's a challenge. And my advice to anybody is I say this, but I'm a bit naughty about it sometimes myself. My son will say, you don't always believe in yourself, and I am guilty of that. And I think part of it is because I'm also competitive, and I think a lot of that comes from my dad. Years ago, my dad was an ex-sergeant major. You can imagine my dad ordered you to do things. And in fact, when I ran the Coventry Marathon, I did a pretty good time, considering I'd never run a marathon at that time. That was about, I think it was 3:20, I think I'd done it in. And he said, if you'd run a bit faster, you could have been the first woman across the line. I thought, well, actually, I thought I did pretty good out of that. But it makes you competitive in that sense. But by the same token, standing on that start line, I get very, very, very nervous, very, very nervous. And I try and keep away from everybody else, because that makes me even more nervous. And you'd have laughed at me when I was at Olympia, because I went in later than others, and I was stood. There was a guy that sat like by the side of me. He was standing by the side of me, and I was talking to myself, telling myself, I can do this. I can do this. You've trained for this. You've got this. You can do this. Believe in yourself. And it was that again, kind of like trying to instill some self-belief that I could get through this. And I'm also a believer that I've got my guardian angel there looking after me, and mum and dad that, you know, since passed away. I say, give me the strength to get through this. I'm a believer I have a little guardian angel, that's there. Guys, I've got various things. I will share a story with you. When I was in the Far East with my brother, going back years and years and years ago, I fell over 40 feet doing this parascending, and I went through a beach hut. I completely demolished a beach hut. Thank goodness nobody was in it at the time. But it made me very popular for the rest of the holiday. Yeah, we've got photographs of it, and to this date, when we see this beach hut, and my brother said at the time, my God, I was just thinking, how the hell am I going to tell mum and dad that, you died doing parascending? I'll let you do parascending. And you fell, and you went straight through this beach hut. It was during their monsoon season. There was a freak wind, and it blew me right into this massive palm tree on this cliff top thing. And I just fell. And guys, if I'd have been just a fraction more to the right, I'd have hit the rocks. But as I went through a beach hut. I don't know how I got onto that, really. But it's the guardian angel. It's the guardian angel
was watching you that day.
Guardian angel was watching me that day. And I think that my guardian angel was there with me at Olympia, because, when you're partway around, you're thinking, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? And I said, come on, guardian angel, give me this energy that I need. Give me this energy that I need. And it is, and they did help me deliver.
Oh my God. Story. I mean, that is crazy.
Well, I feel like we've covered loads, which is amazing. So maybe for the last bit, we can go on to the cheeky insight questions, and we can find out about your favorite bits and not so favorite bits of Hyrox. So if everyone's ready to go, the first question is, what shoes do you wear to race Hyrox?
Well, the last ones that I wore were Nike Zoomfly that my daughter and son-in-law bought for me as a birthday present. This is the other thing, isn't it? The footwear has changed so much over the years. And I think that's probably why, again, that degeneration in my joints was because the footwear that I used to wear years ago running wasn't as incredibly designed as it is today to take a lot of that impact and stress and strain out of your joints. So they bought me those, and yeah, they're great. I've got on well with them. They do the job, put it that way. They're very bright, but it's fine. It's fine. But yeah, they're
good. Color is important. Okay, next one is, which is your favorite Hyrox venue that you've raced in?
Well, I haven't raced in that many, to be honest with you. Birmingham and Olympia. I probably would say Olympia for two reasons, because it felt less hemmed in. I felt less hemmed in. Whether that's because you also had the balconies where you could look down, it just felt more open, less claustrophobic. And of course, because it's where I achieved my world record. So yeah, I suppose Olympia has to be my favourite. Yeah. And I will have those wonderful memories of that joyous occasion, of all those lovely people that were so supportive of me. I will treasure that, guys. I will treasure that.
Yeah, absolutely. A really special memory there, and the venue is beautiful. I think it's really nice with the balcony.
Venue. Yeah.
Okay, next one is, which is your favorite Hyrox station and why?
Oh,
if any?
I was going to say them. Well, I'll tell you what my worst is. I hate wall balls. I hate it. Even training to do wall balls, I absolutely hate. But probably got two on par. I mean, the farmers carry, because it's quicker. You can run with those and get it over and done with. And you think, right, that's another station down, done. And lunges, because I can get a bit of breath back. Yeah, I can get a bit of breath back during that really, and start focusing, thinking, okay, you know, we've just got this last bit now. Yeah, so yeah.
It's good. On the London Olympia, knowing you've only got one more run to do. You've just got one more, and then so close. Okay, next up is, or maybe you've already done a doubles with the person that you would want to, but if there was anyone else in the world you could choose, who would you choose to do a doubles Hyrox with?
Well, because I mean, Natalie, my daughter, she's done some doubles with other people, and continue to do that because of improving on her times and things. But I'd like to do one with my daughter, just to see what we could actually deliver together, really. Because I've done one with my son, I think it's only fair that, you know, I'd love to be able to do one with my daughter. I think if I was going to do one with somebody else, you know, strangely enough, it was only the other day when I saw Tom Cruise. He's an absolute nutcase, isn't he? You know, he's such a formidable guy. Could you imagine him doing a Hyrox? He would just have to be the best and the fastest. He'd be incredible. Could you imagine that? You could let him do all the heavy bits, and you just chip in a little bit here and there.
Yeah, you can just run around behind him if he can do all the hard work.
Go on, you carry on, Tom. You carry on. I'll just fill in a bit here.
Yeah,
all eyes on you.
That's a good one. But I think with your daughter as well, that would be really cool. Mother-daughter duo, I think, is a really good one, and that would be a nice memory and share that as well. So fingers crossed you can make that one happen soon. Okay, perfect. Next up is, do you fuel for Hyrox? And if so, what do you have and when do you take it in the race?
Well, certainly the day before I will carb load, most definitely. On the day, I mean, I'll give you, when I was traveling up to London Olympia, I was in the back of the car because I wasn't driving, but I was eating my porridge that I mix with banana and nuts and cranberries, because, you know, with them being a slow carbohydrate release, the oats, I think it fills me up. But I'll also take a gel, usually about half an hour before I actually race, and then I'll take a gel usually, if I can get it out of my pocket, and get the top off, halfway through usually. That's what I tend to do anyway.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's kind of quite a common, like halfway through around about the rower is quite a good spot. And I mean, we've had quite a few people on here say they have often not been able to open it, or they've dropped it on the floor, or you know, all the chaos and the sweat. It's just okay, perfect. What's your favorite type of training session for Hyrox?
I think I'd have to say, you know, I enjoy training with all the other people around me, because they also help to drive me, you know. They can push me, because when you're on your own, it can be harder to discipline yourself, you know, doing so many burpees and doing so many lunges or wall balls when you're on your own. You know, it's easier to think, oh God, that's enough now. But when you're with other people, you know, and you know that they're knocking out X, Y, and Z, and you want to keep up, that helps. But don't get me wrong, I mean, when I've had some recent sessions with my coach, and doing some technical stuff, understanding things a little bit more, is interesting as well as hard. It's interesting. So the train, it's very, very different. I get different things from it, really. But yeah, training with my buddies, I think, is probably my favorite.
Yeah. So nice to have the support around you.
Oh yeah.
Okay, next one is, in a nutshell, why should someone sign up for their first Hyrox?
Oh, it's I think I would advise anybody to give it a go, because it's probably one of the most challenging experiences, but probably one of the most exhilarating experiences. You won't think so at the time, but afterwards, you know, you'll look back and you think, oh my gosh, you know, I actually achieved that. It pushes you to your max, And I think every time then you do another one, it'll push you even more. But I think anyone, I'll say to anybody at the gym when they'll say to me, oh, I couldn't possibly do a Hyrox. I say, oh, yes, you could, because you just put your mind to it. Anybody's capable of doing it. Just put your mind to it. Just listen to your body. Take it as baby steps. But when you've done it, you'll want to do another one. It gets in your blood. It's there. It is. It's like a leech, you know. You go back for more. It's like having a baby. You think, oh, after it, you know, you think, oh my God, I'm never going to have another baby again. Going through all that delivery and thinking, oh my God. But what do? You go and get pregnant again, and you have another baby. You know, we're mad, aren't we? We do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people will relate to that, but I do think that's a very important message, that you should, like, don't ever think you can't do something, and you should give it a go, baby steps, and you'll get there. And I don't know how anyone wouldn't be inspired listening to this to give one a go. So fingers crossed that if someone's thinking about signing up, they will now. And then lastly, is there anyone that you would like to see on our podcast that we could interview, find out a bit more about, or some, like, a type of person in the Hyrox world or community?
I mean, don't get me wrong, guys. I mean, I love listening to your podcast because they're all very inspiring, and listening to people's, you know, overcoming adversity in one form or another and getting to where they are is absolutely incredible. I think it would be, you know, I feel privileged to be able to come on here and do a podcast with you, because I'm just me. I'm just a normal me that just enjoys doing some exercise and achieving goals in my life. But I think it would be nice to try and get some other people that perhaps a bit like myself, that maybe are not elite athletes in that sense, or even some of the coaches, you know, because it's interesting to think, you know, Dave Williams is my coach, and my son-in-law, Ant Pullen, and Natalie Pullen. And I often wonder sometimes, are they thinking things when I'm doing certain things and they're not saying them because they don't want to be too harsh with me, or, you know, it would be interesting to get their perspective on things and their perspective on athletes. I think that would be quite an interesting one, to bring in some coaches, get their point of view on things, really. Because I'm sure that their adrenaline when they come and watch you must be going through the roof, you know, because they've put that work in, but they're not actually doing it, but they want the best for you, and they want to see results for all the work that they've put in.
Absolutely. I think sometimes spectating can be harder than actually racing, the stress of the adrenaline. No, that's amazing. Thank you so much. I think you do now have a Instagram page, if I'm correct, if people wanted to follow your journey and see how you get on in Chicago. Do you know what the what the Instagram's called?
Yeah, I think because I'm rubbish at technology, I've got to be honest with you guys, and I didn't have an Instagram page until of recent, but it's Savage at 65. That's what they've set up for me, Savage at 65.
Love it.
But yeah, you can get yeah.
They can
follow me through that.
Yeah, no problem. We will link it all below anyway in the show notes, so people will be able to find you. Hopefully we will also be able to say hello in person in Chicago. And we are wishing you so much luck for that race. It's been incredible to chat to you, to hear more about your story, and I honestly think you're so inspiring. I think so many people will take so much away from this, and you might think that you're just you and just going along doing your training, but I think so many people just think you're incredible and amazing, and take so much from it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, guys. It's very kind of you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, no, you're very welcome. And thank you to everyone who's been listening. And please make sure you follow the show. If you enjoy this episode, share it on your socials. Give Avril a tag now she's got Instagram. And we will catch you on the next episode.
Thank you, guys.